All right, tonight I'm going to begin by sharing a brief video clip from the woman who taught me so much about care. Listen to Carol Garbodin Murray talk about what children learn from caring interactions.
Carol Garbodin Murray, and I am happy to introduce you to Illuminating Care, the Pedagogy and Practice of Care, which was published by Exchange Press in 2021. I wrote this book while working alongside babies and toddlers and preschoolers and directing programs for young children because I was so fascinated with what happens when we live life alongside children, how much of our time we spend in caring rituals. I just think it's fascinating to consider these enormous milestones, this gigantic journey that children are on between the ages of 0 and 5. These pathways of learning that involve care rituals, learning to regulate their bodies, learning when they're tired, when they're awake, how to modulate, how to control their internal systems, learning when they're satiated, when they're hungry, how to develop a relationship with food after you've just come from breast or bottle, how children come to understand their worthiness, how they become empathetic, how they become thinkers, all through this engagement, this interaction that we have with them while we're caring for them. And care is a gigantic part of our work.
All right. So this video, unfortunately, Carol cannot join us for this live discussion, but she made this video a few years ago. And so I was really fortunate to work with Carol. She's a DEI National Advisor, and we co-led a book study on her amazing book, Illuminating Care. And so she put this recording together for introduction to the book study, and I will go ahead and put the link in the comments so you can find it. It's on the DEY YouTube page. So there's the link. Hopefully it'll come up in your comments and you can click on that. And I just wanted to start with just a little clip to that. I knew care was important to the work of early childhood education, but I did not truly understand how care is fundamental to supporting whole child development until I did this. So reading Illuminating Care and working with Carol over the 4 weeks of our book study taught me so much about care. And tonight I want to share with you some of what I learned in hopes that it'll help you really think about care as well too. Care is not just the work of early childhood educators, caregivers, and parents. It's a value that I believe we can use to resist systems that devalue care and force us to treat childhood as a stage for preparation, for academic preparation. So, oh, sorry, I put the wrong one up. Okay, there we go. This is what I wanted to bring up. On page 19 in her book, there is this quote, Carol, in the book of Illuminating Care, Carol shares this quote from Milton Mayeroff. We sometimes speak as if care did not require knowledge, as if caring for someone, for example, were simply a matter of good intentions or warm regard. But to care, I must understand the other's needs, and I must be able to respond properly to them, and clearly good intentions do not guarantee this. To care for someone, I must know many things. So Carol used this quote as an invitation to a pedagogy of care, because care unites the head, hand, and heart of the teacher. And that's another quote that's also from page 18 of her wonderful book. I want to start here because before we can value care, we must shift our thinking from care being the low-skilled work that regulates early childhood education to a low-status profession, and instead come to see care as a pedagogy that allows children to grow and develop. All right. So, I did the same one again. There we go. Welcome back. I am Dr. Denisha Jones. I'm a scholar activist. I'm a teacher educator, true play advocate, and creator of a community called Free to Teach Equals Liberated to Learn. We are in week 6 of Embracing Early Childhood Education Care Values as Resistance. It's my Wednesday night live series where we dig into 10 early childhood education and values that should be guiding our work with young children, and use a 4-part framework to turn those values into active resistance. So you can see the values here on the stage. We're a little early tonight because I have another event at 7 p.m. for Defending the Earliers. We're doing a book study. And so I'm doing this one, but normally we're on at 7 p.m. Every Wednesday until we get through all 10. And today we're on value 5. So if you're joining us for the first time, this series is rooted in a special issue of the Global Education Review that I co-edited with Hel Wasmuth, and it's called Navigating an Uncertain Future by Embracing Our Early Childhood Care Values. A blue QR code is on the top of your screen, and you can scan that to access the first issue. So each week we take one of the 10 values, unpack it, and walk through the 4-step framework together. Name it, audit it, frame it, advocate for it. If you missed last week's value on aligning aligning child development practices with research, you can scan the red QR code to find the recording on my YouTube page. All right. So today, and get rid of all that stuff on the screen, we're talking about centering care. So our value 5 is centering care as fundamental to fostering healthy development in the early years. Care gets a bad rap. I think we all know that, right? For some, they view custodial care as the bare minimum, right? The mandatory state laws, minimum state laws, right? As if keeping kids alive and safe is not a monumental task when they are young and fragile, and there are many of them in your care, right? Others see care work as what a babysitter does, and in a profession that is feminized and held hostage at the bottom of pay scales. Early childhood professionals often dismiss care because they want to be seen as a real teacher. And education is about teaching and learning, not cleaning noses and wiping butts, as I've been told by educators before. But we shouldn't separate the care we provide for a child during their toilet learning routines from teaching a child how to write their name. And those who engage in care routines daily are often led to move through them like a well-oiled machine, right? And not a pedagogy and practice that builds relationships and nurtures self-concept, right? But what if we changed our thinking? What if we saw care as an art, care as a science, care as what makes us human, care as education, or care as a right? These are just a few of the lamps of care that Carol introduced me to, and they've helped me reframe my thinking about care in early childhood education. When I was a preschool director at a community college in California, I made it a point to engage in all of the care routines whenever I visited, mainly the youngest classroom, right? I would change diapers and I would help wash hands and even clean up after a snack. And often when I was in the room, the teachers would try to take over for me, but I insisted because I believe that every adult in the room should engage in care practices. As a director, when I stepped in for coverage for a break, I did everything the other educators did. But now that I've really expanded my understanding of care as part of our pedagogy, I realized that by sharing the caring rituals with my staff, I was modeling for them the type of leadership I believed was needed in early childhood education and care. But I was also building relationships with those children who I cared for during those breaks. So once we unpack all of the ways that care is undervalued, and we can go on, I could do a whole live just on that, but we need to reorient our thinking to see care as relational. Through our care practices, we model appropriate behaviors and support children in developing important social and emotional skills, as well as language and right other ones. We build oral language as we support children during mealtime. We provide opportunities for children to practice empathy and perspective taking as we prepare for nap and rest time. We encourage children to listen to their bodies as we support their toilet learning. These are not less important skills because they happen during care routines. In fact, I would argue that they are the foundational skills needed to support deeper cognitive and academic learning. Before children can learn, explore, take risks, or develop a sense of who they are, they need to feel safe, seen, and cared for. And this is not sentiment, it's developmental science. Relationships are the architect of early learning. The reality that care is devalued, underpaid, and underrecognized means we must demonstrate how we embrace care as a value. We must remind people that nurturing a child's sense of security is not less important than teaching them to read. It is the prerequisite. I center care in everything I build because I believe that environments where children are genuinely cared for produce children who are genuinely free to learn. So I want to pause and here and give you a chance to reflect. So I'm going to put two questions up on the screen. And I'll just put them on the screen for now. I don't have them ready to go in the comments. So the first one is helping a child learn to put on their shoes less important than teaching them a new word, right? So I want you to think about that, and you can add your questions to the comments. And then what would your practice look like if you valued everyday tasks of care as educational? So again, while you reflect on that, I want to recognize those of you who might want to push back on care because you work in a public school setting and you want to be treated as a real teacher, right? I get it. I worked in childcare and public school settings, and I understand how the system often pits us against each other by deeming one more worthy of respect than the other. I get the feeling that you want to be engaged in the traditional art and science of teaching, which doesn't leave room for care. I recognize that you might be feeling a bit resentful, being asked to elevate care instead of elevating your status as an educator. But I want to remind you that giving into those who devalue care work and demean child care providers as less than public school teachers isn't going to help the early childhood profession gain more respect. All it does is ensure that we will continue to fight among each other instead of uniting. Family child care providers, babysitters, preschool teachers, and public school teachers all deserve respect because they provide a valuable service not only to families, but to our society. Caring for children at all ages is one of the most important responsibilities of a democracy. And we must not let those who seek to discredit the importance of care trick us into following their lead. As many states continue expanding universal early care and education into public schools, we are already seeing how some educators are pushing back against having to care for young children in public school settings. I read an article a few months ago, maybe last year, that noted how some teachers of 4-year-olds were not prepared to engage in care routines. They expect the children to come to school fully potty trained and not in need of support for toilet learning and for toilet teaching and learning. And the reality is that many 4-year-olds need ongoing support for many care practices. They might be potty trained, but they might need help wiping or dressing. And they shouldn't be made to feel bad for needing this help at 4 or even 5 years old. But the teachers preparing for these children are often not trained in early childhood education. So they don't understand child development and they haven't been taught to value care. And it shouldn't be the child's responsibility to fix it. We need teachers who are ready to meet the children where they are at, to meet them with the care interactions they need. They need you to embrace care as a value. So I want to take a minute and check the comments and see if anyone has anything to add to our discussion. And then we're going to move on to advocating for this value. What does it look like to advocate for care as a value? Well, I've got some examples in the framework that I am going to share with you, and an example from the book study that I did with Carol. One of the stories that she shared ended up being a really good example that I could use here. So I'm super excited to get into it with you. All right, comments look good. Feel free to chat. I don't see anything. They usually pop up here. My other comment, I see some of you didn't get the video link. Okay, I will. All right, I'll try that again. I don't know where it didn't show up, but I will add it to the comments in the YouTube video in case you watch the replay. And if you do watch the replay and you want to add anything to the YouTube video comments, I will check those as well too. So feel free to go ahead and do that. All right, so now let's apply the 4-part framework that I created to this value. The first step is to name your value. How does care guide your commitment to high quality early childhood education for all children? I believe before we can teach a child, we must show them that we care for them. Caring builds relationships that are necessary for learning to take place. Caring fosters trust and confidence in the child and the adults. If we treat caring as a chore that is beneath us, we will miss out on the opportunities to connect with the children in our care through care. Step 2 is to conduct an alignment audit. What policies prohibit you from enacting this value? What behaviors show you are out of alignment? And what is an early warning sign that you are drifting? The policies that I see that interfere with this value are ones that deem a child as unready for school because they haven't mastered particular care routines, right? Tying biological maturation to or biological ability skills to school readiness really devalues care as work that doesn't belong in school. So you can't go to school unless you're potty trained, right? Care should not stop when a child is expected to take over certain care routines. Caring for children should remain a part of what we do as children get older. Behaviors that show I'm out of alignment with this value is enforcing public school rules for meal times onto preschool age children. When young children are expected to sit still and not talk during meal times, we are not valuing care and the beauty of engaging in conversations as a part of mealtime practices and routines. An early warning sign that you're drifting from this value is when you become resentful for having to engage in care routines. Please pay attention to feelings of hostility and maybe even a little anger that surface when you are asked to engage in care practices. These feelings indicate that you do not value care as pedagogy, and your feelings can show up in your care interactions with children. And I remember this vividly from my days as a preschool teacher and a child, it was preschool, so they're 4 years old, maybe he was 5, but had a horrible accident and I had to clean it up. And there were other teachers there, but they refused, right? It was one of those, I'm not doing that, you can do it. You're the aide, right? I wasn't the teacher. I was still in grad school at that time. So I was working as like a part-time aide. And the poor child, I remember this look on his face that he was so embarrassed because nobody wanted to help him in this situation. And I get it was kind of disgusting and kind of gross, right? But like he felt embarrassed by it because of how the other adults were responding, that nobody wanted to deal with him. And then they got me to do it. And he kept apologizing. And I just never wanted him to feel bad. He had an accident. Kids have accidents. It happens sometimes. We have accidents as adults, right? And so, yeah, that's why I really think it's important that we, I was angry at the other teachers and they were angry, but when it would come to him in his face and seeing how sad he was, I just let it all go. Honey, we all have accidents. I'm going to tell your mom, though, we are burning these clothes because trust me, she don't want them back. And he laughed a little. And so we cleaned up and it was a lot of things. But yeah, it just reminded me that it's so important that we check ourselves when we're feeling like this is something we can't do or shouldn't have to do, right? And the messages it sends to the child about who got relegated to do it, right? And who doesn't and that sort of thing. All right, so third, frame the message. Why does this value matter? This is your elevator speech. My elevator speech comes from Carol's amazing work. Eliminating Care is a great book. You have to get it. So I will tell people care is what makes us human, care is education, and care is a right. We cannot separate care from education in the early years, and we must elevate care practices to a high standard if we are to truly invest in supporting optimal whole child development. That's it. Nice, short, and sweet. And finally, the fourth step is to advocate for your value. How can you advocate for this value in your personal and professional life? So during one of the book study sessions, as I mentioned, Carol shared how she was giving feedback to a student teacher, and she focused on her hands during a caring routine. The student was shocked that she didn't comment on the quality of her lesson or her activity, but instead focused on the caring practice, right? But Carol thought that it was important to show her how her hands in the many different positions of caring demonstrated many different things to the child and to the children, right? She pointed out something that the student teacher never would have noticed. And I think this is how you advocate for care. You show people the art and the science of caring. You demonstrate how caring strengthens relationships. You make caring visible and prominent in the eyes of adults who tend not to see care in action. And you talk about the importance of care as the heart of the work you do. So thank you, Carol, for showing me how to advocate for care. So tonight's value, centering care as fundamental to fostering healthy development, is one I hope you will learn to embrace in your work as an early childhood educator, caregiver, and even a parent. Well, I'm sure for parents, we care for kids all day long, right? So if anything in tonight's discussion sparked an interest in you, I invite you to join my community, Free to Teach equals Liberated to Learn. You can scan the green QR code on your screen to join for free. And I don't have a sneak peek for next week's live. I will add it, though, to the recording. So if you watch this video on YouTube, you will see the video for the recording. For next week, I can add that there. But I am talking about value number 6, which is one of my favorites. It's on affirming and celebrating diversity as an asset in the lives of young children. And it's aligned perfectly because right now in my community, I have a mini reflective course on fostering healthy identity in the early years and guided reflective prompts on an identity and belonging in early childhood. So everything's coming together next week where I'm focusing on on healthy identity everywhere. And we're going to broadcast live to the Defending the Early Years Facebook page because I'm using the framework I created as part of that session as well. We did this last week too. We picked up a couple viewers from Defending the Early Years, so I'm hoping to pick up a few more. And I hope to have a special guest. I can't announce it yet, but I will announce it as soon as I do. So thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for protecting childhood and for caring for the children that you work with every day. And I will see you next week.